Chapter 10 Abhimanyu. Amidst the Kuru Field, 13th day. Early in the morning, before sunrise, Arjun had received a scroll from the Trigatas, and the Samsaptaks that Arjun had defeated them unfairly the previous day, and they wanted a fair rematch on the southern side of Kuru Field that day. As expected, Arjun had accepted the challenge, and taking a battalion of experienced archers and spear fighters, with him and with Krishna for charioteer, he went out before sunrise to the designated location where his enemies waited for him. The place had been chosen in such a way so that even with help of weapons of mass confusion and destruction, it would take Arjun at least half a day to return to the battlefield. Without him and fearing the worst, the Pandav army went out to face the Kauravs once more on the 13th day, and then they saw the discus-shaped array formed by their enemy. As they waited for sunrise, unsure of what array to form against this, Yudhishthira said, "We do not know of this array, only Arjun does, and he is not here." Yudhishthira turned behind him at his commanders and asked aloud, "Does anyone here know how to penetrate this formidable array the enemy presents to us?" None spoke up, except Abhimanyu. "I do," Abhimanyu said, sounding a bit unsure. "Father taught me." "Then today, it is on you, Abhimanyu, to save us from the ignominy of defeat," Yudhishthira said, sounding pleased with having the chance at success. "Lead us into battle today and help us break the enemy. Otherwise, your father will come back and reprimand us for our cowardice." "But," Abhimanyu said hesitantly, "Father never taught me how to exit the formation once I have penetrated it up to the center. If something goes wrong, I cannot come out." "You penetrate it and leave the rest to us," Bhim said. "You will have a horde of the strongest warriors behind you, including me." "The discus array is not about strength," Abhimanyu said, and jumping down from his chariot, he drew a spiral on the bloody and muddy ground, using an arrow. Pointing at it, he said, "The formation is not a fixed structure like this. Once the battle starts, the whole thing will rotate and its center will move in an unpredictable way. You enter through the opening and you are dead, no matter how great a warrior you are, even if you are my father himself. The only way is to go straight and break the formation from one edge, but doing it alone means nothing short of running into a trap." He made a triangle beside the circular array on the sand, and then made another triangle that penetrated halfway into the array, continuing, "We will make the triangle-shaped array with me in the lead and penetrate their defenses, with the broader rear of our array splitting and tearing apart their circle. Once inside, everything will look similar and you will be tempted to go through gaps, but that would be a mistake. All those behind me must follow me and me only. I know exactly which way to go to get to the center. Once there, you will have to take over, as I have no knowledge of going any further and exiting from the other side." "How hard can it be?" Yudhishthira said, sounding excited. "And if with Abhimanyu's help we can get to even half of the array, then the preceptor will know that his plans are foiled and he will retreat. We will all follow Abhimanyu to battle today." Abhimanyu said, "But, at all times you must stay as close to me as possible and never lose sight of me." Bhim said, sounding excited now, "Don't worry, Abhimanyu. I, Drishtadyumna, and his Panchal forces will be protecting you. You will have nothing to fear. We will be behind you. Now go, make your father proud." "Then let's go," Abhimanyu said, climbing to his chariot as the war horns blew. "I will go break that formation today, or else I will not consider myself the son of Arjun and the nephew of Krishna." Quickly forming the triangle array, with Abhimanyu at the head, the Pandav army rushed at the circular array, which came towards them rotating with the moving Kaurav warriors. As soon as the two armies made contact, Abhimanyu's steeds broke through the rim of soldiers, all carrying full-length metal shields and spears. Shooting arrows with heavy and broad tips, Abhimanyu struck the shields, made them falter, and ramming against them with his chariot, penetrated through the defenses, while the Pandavs and the Panchal forces followed him in. Then he did same with the next arc of soldiers that he came across. These were warriors of Sindhu and had been ordered to let the first few chariots through, before changing formation and making a barrier before the rest of the army, making them try to go around them and into the death maze of the discus array. and they executed it perfectly in spite of the fact that none of them were smart enough to see that the lead warrior was not Yudhishthir, but Abhimanyu. The triangle array of the Pandavas broke, and most of the rear side was trapped inside and outside the enemy array, with zero coordination between them. Without looking behind, Abhimanyu rained arrows on the chariots and elephantry he found before him, blocking his path. Like his father, he found gaps in the armors of the animals and the warriors and felled them like flies. He also aimed for the wheels of his foes' chariots and rendered them useless with each strike. His uncle had given him the greatest responsibility of his life, and he was not about to let him down. He was fighting for Yudhishthir, the just, and the enemies of the just must be crushed. From his position, Duryodhan saw the flag of the chariot rushing towards the center, scattering their impenetrable formation like house of cards. "That's not Yudhishthir's flag of moon," he said to Dren within vicinity of him. "The emblem is of a golden peacock." "That's Arjun and Subhadra's son," Dren said, "Abhimanyu." At this, Duryodhan urged his charioteer to leave his position and go for the incoming fireball in the guise of a teenage warrior. "Protect your king," Dren ordered, and several factions followed Duryodhan, including the Kauravs and their sons Shakuni and Shalya. Soon, Abhimanyu confronted them, but did not show any fear, as he blocked their arrows using his shield and answered with his arrows in return, which were incessant. Shot in the arms by his arrows and losing blood, Shalya fainted on his own chariot. Karna moved against him and shot his arrows at Abhimanyu, but Arjun's capable son blocked them and replied in kind. Karna was not ready for such aggression from his young foe, and he was unable to block all the shafts in time. Pierced by the arrows, he faltered and retreated back to safety. Next, he shot a sharp, straight arrow at Karna's younger son, Sushan, at his neck and killed him there. The 4 Pandavas had been following Abhimanyu, with the army of Panchal led by Drishtadyumna behind them. The army further behind were already lost to the maze. Then huge shields blockaded their paths, and they lost sight of Abhimanyu's chariot. Spears plunged in through the gaps between these shields and impaled the horses of the chariots about to collide with them. With the injured and dead horses, the vehicles collided against the wall of shields and threw their riders to the ground. The Pandavas realized as they got up that they, along with the small battalion of Panchals, were trapped in a part of the discus array. From behind several layers of shields and soldiers, Jaydrath watched his strategy fall into place and enjoyed his chance at getting his vengeance. Jaydrath did not care whether Yudhishthir was captured or not. He only wanted revenge on the Pandavas for the humiliation they caused him. After losing their kingdom, when the Pandavas were in the forest, Jaydrath had approached Draupadi once, mesmerized by her beauty, when she was alone. But she refused him, and in anger, he abducted her. The Pandavas then appeared out of thin air to rescue her and overpowered him. Then they shaved his head, keeping only 5 tufts of hair, and set him free with a warning. Disfigured and humiliated, Jaydrath had been thirsty for revenge since then, and today it would be quenched. His hair grew back, but the fire of vengeance in his heart had not gone out. Bhim used his mace to smash through the shields, but at the orders of Jaydrath, the shields closed in on the Pandavas and their soldiers from all sides, leaving almost no room for raising their weapons to strike with force. The Jaydrath himself started raining arrows on the trapped enemies who held their shields up like umbrella. On the other side, Abhimanyu alone, without looking back, penetrated deeper into the array while injuring and felling soldiers around him. He was pierced with arrows on his arms and legs, and so was his charioteer, but they broke the shafts off and continued, covered in their own blood. Abhimanyu next came across Dushasan and said to him mid-battle, "You wretch had insulted my uncle and my stepmother. Get ready for payback." And his arrow plunged into Dushasan's shoulder joint, making him stagger. Duryodhan, accompanied by his son Lakshman, shot arrows at Abhimanyu, but they were all expertly blocked by his shield. Abhimanyu's next arrows pierced Duryodhan's exposed arms and made him fall down on his own chariot. The charioteer veered his master towards safety, but Lakshman stayed behind and he continued shooting arrows at Abhimanyu. The arrows of inexperienced hands glanced of Abhimanyu's shield, and then using an arrow with broad and serrated head, he decapitated Lakshman. Duryodhan turned back on his vehicle and was stupefied to see his son's headless body roll down from the chariot, far behind several lines of soldiers. The world around him seemed to collapse as Duryodhan realized what happened. The two Kaurav brothers came to the center, where Drona was stationed with Karna and others. "That boy should not leave this battlefield alive today, Preceptor," Duryodhan said with bloodshot eyes. "Don't let your fondness of Arjun spare his son, cause he didn't spare ours. Get to the safety behind the line of shields and let the boy approach," Drona said. "He is alone now." As Abhimanyu's vehicle reached the eye of the discus array, he found before him 6 chariots that moved in a circle and soon encompassed him. Covered in blood and sweat, he looked behind him and saw that the Pandav army was nowhere in sight, and the broken formation behind him was slowly being reconstituted. He was now surrounded by Generalissimo Drona, his son Ashwatthama, Preceptor Kripa, the Yadav, Kritavarma, Karna and Brihadbal, king of Kaushal. Arrows rained upon Abhimanyu as he ducked under 2 shields trying to cover the 360 degrees of attack. Arrows found gaps in his chain mail and buried themselves in the flesh of his back and upper arm. Dropping one shield suddenly, Abhimanyu aimed his bow and shot arrows aimed at each of his assailant, while his charioteer moved the vehicle within the narrow space in the ambush. With arrows sticking out of his armor on all sides, Abhimanyu shot at Brihadbal and hit his heart, through the gap in the underarm of his armor. That descendant of Lord Ram then fell down from his chariot dead. Enraged at the former death of his own son, Karna shot arrows at Abhimanyu, which pierced his torso non-lethally through the armor, but the boy was relentless as he shot back, piercing Karna's armor in similar fashion. Drumsan, Dushasan's son, entered the circle, desiring to avenge his cousin, and aimed his arrow at Abhimanyu, who spoke in return through the pain of his wounds. "Your father fled me. Hope you are a better warrior." Dodging his enemy's arrow, Abhimanyu went to shoot, but Drona's arrow came in and snapped his shaft. There were a few exchange of words between the general and the rest of his companions. Then Karna, himself covered in blood, shot the next arrow and cracked Abhimanyu's bow. Kritavarma's arrows killed his steeds and Kripa killed the charioteer, rendering Abhimanyu's vehicle useless. Desperate, Abhimanyu took up his sword and shield, jumping down from his chariot, but Drona's arrow broke the blade and Karna's arrows made him drop the shield. Abhimanyu yelled in frustration and, dodging the next few arrows in a somersault, picked up the wheel of a broken chariot as an object of defense and offense. Using it like a shield, he went ahead at his enemies once more. All the 6 warriors now shot their arrow together at the wheel, breaking it to fragments. Abhimanyu, still refusing to give up, jumped to his stranded chariot and picked up a mace, with he came at Ashwatthama, making him flee from his chariot while he smashed in the face of his charioteer. He then went for Drumsan's chariot, bludgeoning his steeds. Drumsan, taking his own mace, jumped down on the ground next to Abhimanyu and struck at his head with full force. Drained of blood, fatigued from the inhuman efforts put forth by him, Abhimanyu collapsed to the ground at the smashing blow. As Abhimanyu breathed his last, lying on the battlefield with arrows sticking out of him like quills of porcupine, fresh blood pooled around him and the war cries and shouts around them subsided, replaced by howls of triumph. Drona got down from the chariot, solemnly walked to the dead son of Arjun, and then he said, looking down at him, partly to himself and partly to the warriors around him, "Arjun had taught his son well. All the while he fought, we found no lapse in him. And it took all 6 of us together to bring him down. I declare retreat in honor of this fallen hero." Pandav military camp. Arjun stood in the middle of the war council dumbfounded, with Krishna standing by his side, as the rest of the Pandav commanders and his brothers were either seated or stood with pale face and sorrowful expression, still in their dusty, blood-stained battle gears. Arjun too was covered in blood and mud and had many gashes on his arms. The battle with the Samsaptaks went well, and he had felled nearly half of them. But Sushama and a few others fled away, saving themselves. Abhimanyu was all alone in the center. Yudhishthir was saying, hanging his head and weeping, he fought on with those 6 mighty warriors till his last breath. He went in at my command and— "Tell me how it happened," Arjun demanded, his shoulders shaking from grief and rage. He knew better than to enter the discus array alone. I taught him that. He knew, Yudhishthira said, and he told us to follow him, protect him from behind, forming the triangle array. Then why didn't you? Yudhishthira said, shaking his head. Jadrath and his siege warriors had us trapped in an encirclement of shields and almost crushed our division. We would have been dead, had it not been for the sudden ceasefire in honor of your son. Jadrath has not forgotten his humiliation, and he threw everything at us today. Gritting his teeth and his face red from anger, Arjun grabbed his Gandiv and shouted loudly, "Those sinners had killed a child today, my child, 6 against 1. He was alone because of that Jadrath. I swear that tomorrow before sunset I will kill that wretch Jadrath. And if I cannot do that, I will self-immolate. That is my unwavering vow."
To be continued. Stay tuned for the next chapter.